I moved to my first startup. And for the last 15 years, I've been working with a string of startups that have been in a very high growth phase and very rapid pace. And this change, when I moved from the large company to the startup, was in a way like moving from an oil tanker to a fighter jet. Not just in terms of agility and speed, but on every possible dimension. And learning and development being one of them. So I will spend some time a little bit in terms of what kind of change I saw when I went from a large company to a set of startups. And in startups, outcomes matter, results matter, there is no place for rituals. So this is one big change that I noticed. So let me just start with this, which is a lot of learning really comes from intense experiences. In 2017, I'm assuming that every one of you would have some idea about how startups work. Do all of you have some idea? At least even if you don't work for startups, you do have some idea, right? In spite of that, let me just take a minute to give you how a startup looks like. So a startup is a place where processes are not in place. Even if they are in place, they're either imperfect or, not of high caliber. And things are always breaking down. Customers are always expecting the same kind of quality that they would expect from products that a larger and more mature company delivers. So expectations are the same. Processes are not mature and strong. And therefore, people are extremely busy. You wouldn't find time for learning and development specifically. So for example, just let's take Amazon, right? Amazon is a 20-year-old company, has been selling for 20 years online, has been used to handling Christmas peaks and a lot of festive peaks. But look at Flipkart and a company like BigBasket. When they tried this out for the first time, and where there is a surge on a billion-day sale, you can imagine what would happen to the technology. The technology breaks down, servers crash, things don't necessarily work. At this point of time when people are busy fixing stuff, if you tell them come into a classroom, you think people will walk into a classroom for training? No way. So in a startup, in a high growth environment where people are extremely busy, you need to be able to integrate learning into the daily things of business. If you can't integrate learning into business, then life becomes very difficult. So training will never succeed if you can't find a way of integrating your learning into business. So at this point, let me just pause and ask all of you that if you just think back in terms of what made you successful or what made you who you are, what would you say? Anyone wants to just volunteer? What made you successful or what made you who you are? Anyone wants to volunteer? Experience. Okay, great. So very few of you are going to say that, some training program made me successful, even if it was at the Harvard Business School. Most of you would normally allude to a very influential person in your life. It could be a manager who worked with you intensely for a long period of time. It could be your spouse, your parent. It could be your teacher. It could be anybody that you worked with intensely who has influenced you. You might also say that some intense experience made me who I am, or some intense experiences. For instance, I was thrown into the deep end in this organization, and I was forced to learn. I was put into a job that I didn't completely understand, but then I quickly learnt it, and this made me a stronger person. So you would also identify experiences as, what made you who you are. You are rarely going to say training program, a training program that my company put me through. My belief is that a 30-day program, a 3-day program will have minimal influence on what you do in life. So therefore, organizations are much better off integrating learning into your work. So learning cannot be divorced from the way you work. So that's the key entire theme that I'm going to talk about and how it eventually impacts customer experience. So, a lot of people in learning and development call it the 70-20-10 model. Doesn't matter what you call it. So 70% is really comes from tough assignments, being thrown into the deep end, difficult challenges, and on-the-job learning. 20% of your learning comes from great, insightful conversations. Imagine an insightful conversation that you had with your manager. So managers and leaders who are capable of creating these insightful conversations are also creating great learning. Only 10% of learning comes from being put into a classroom or going through an e-learning program. So a lot of it, if you see 90% of this comes from the first two. So wherever I have been, we've tried very hard to focus on the first two and ensure the first two work really, really well. We didn't care about the 10%. We didn't care about putting people into training programs. We found that as we grew and scaled and reached a fairly big level, Big Basket is at a level I can talk about today, where the 10% also becomes slightly important, but we don't lose track of the 90. Everyone, leadership is skeptical about the 10%. Nobody believes classroom training works. So people are always asking, what results are you going to deliver? What change will it create? What will be the impact on customer experience? What will be the impact on the way people perform their roles? And we can't prove that classroom training does it. So we've been very careful in terms of how we do this. So how can you do this? So I'll just talk of some examples in terms of very powerful ways of integrating learning into daily work. One is we had the concept of a monthly review meeting. So in one of the companies that I worked for, there was a monthly review meeting where the entire management committee participated. They brought their teams for the meeting, which means that I would bring the HR team, the HR review would get done, a business head and the team would leave, but I would continue. The business head would continue and bring the business team, and then after the presentation is over, would move on. So these meetings were extremely brutal. For somebody who was coming in for the first time, they would get intimidated for the simple reason that very difficult questions were asked. No explanations were accepted. You had to have a point of view. You had to be able to defend your point of view. And you should be able to defend your point of view with data. If you could do that, you would quickly earn respect, irrespective of your level. But if you couldn't do that, if you meekly accepted it, or if you were meek enough to surrender and not be able to have an answer, you would lose, you would lose face. So these forums were excellent forums for learning. Because if you participated in that review, you could figure out how to deal with difficult questions, how to deal with conflict, how to reach a settlement, how to diplomatically deal with some things that need to be diplomatically dealt with. So you learned a lot of things. And the management also could spot talent because the team would come along with the leader and you could see the depth of the leadership team because the whole team would stand up and make the presentation. You could get a sense of talent 2 levels below. So the review served multiple purposes. It created terrific learning for everyone and it helped in spotting talent, real talent, talent which could stand up, speak, talk, have a point of view, defend that point of view. The other is, second one is provide actionable and insightful feedback. So we made feedback a way of life. So feedback is not necessarily structured and done once in 3 months or once in a month. Feedback is always there. It's constant. It's staring you at your face. If you like it, you say it. If you don't like it, you say it. You say it in the corridor, you say it everywhere. You don't always look for perfect situations to provide feedback. So feedback is an ongoing process. The other thing that we've used for creating constant learning is you invite some of your team members to participate in meetings where they need not necessarily participate. So for example, if I were to meet a colleague of mine and it was an important discussion to be had, I would invite a couple of my team members or one of my team member who would benefit the most by participating in that meeting. Because by observing itself, you can learn a lot. For example, you can observe how you negotiate, how to reach a settlement with a peer, how much to push, how much not to push, how do you deal with conflict. So you learn how decisions are made, what kind of data you look at for decision making, what kind of trade-offs are done. You learn a lot of stuff. There is no better learning, no classroom learning can ever substitute for being present in that meeting where you need not be present. So get people into meetings where there are learning opportunities. And if you do that systematically, there can be tremendous amount of learning. One other way of learning is create stretch goals. Don't push people into classrooms for training. Give them stretch goals. If you tell a head of marketing, I want you to present NPS and I want to understand what are the drivers of NPS and how they correlate with the NPS. NPS, for those who may not know, is Net Promoter Score. The head of marketing would obviously quickly go and learn up statistics, basics of statistics, how to correlate. Don't push the head of marketing into a classroom to learn statistics. Ask questions, push the goals, push the envelope in such a way that learning becomes voluntary and it is pull. So that's how we do by creating stretch assignments, stretch goals, push the envelope, ask difficult questions, ask people to imagine that what they have not been doing, offer bigger roles, for example. And coaching, ultimately I just want to talk about this, which is, we believe is extremely important, the last bit, coaching. And we've taken this to the really next level. And the way we've done this is, we've said, for startups, what are the X number of competencies which are absolutely critical to be successful? And how did we identify this? We talked to 50 managers. We told them, asked them questions like, who are your top performers? They would say A, B, C. Why is A top performer of yours? Can you contrast that with somebody who's not performing well? What is it that this person is demonstrating? So through a series of in-depth questions, we came to some 60, 70 behaviors which we thought were essential for people in startups to succeed. We distilled those 60, 70 behaviors, and then we found that there were really 6 of them. And my belief is that any fast-paced organization, these are the 6. There may be slight variations, but these are the 6. First is be entrepreneurial. What is the meaning of entrepreneurial? You demonstrate a lot of self-leadership. You do the things without being told. You get things done without follow-up. You are prepared to clean the shit and not just say, I want to do only the strategic stuff. So that is number 1. So we identified these 6 competencies. Then what did we do? We said that people don't understand words. Like the way you interpret entrepreneurial may be very different from the way somebody else interprets entrepreneurial. The way somebody interprets building high-performing teams may be very different from the way somebody else interprets it. So we said we'll put out behavioral indicators, which are unambiguous. So this is how we put behavioral indicators. So what is the meaning of entrepreneurial? Entrepreneurial means has energy, can energize, makes decisions in the face of incomplete information. You will never ever have complete information to make decisions, but you can still make decisions. You can make the right approximations. You can make the right trade-offs. You can handle ambiguity. You have the courage to state unpopular views. You can take some tough calls. You can reach closures. You would love discussion, but you will always say, I will minute my discussions and I will start my next meeting by reviewing the previous minutes, because without that, execution never happens. Then we defined that for clarity of thought. What's clarity of thought? Clarity of thought is a person asking questions, asking why not? A person asking continuous questions can often find simple solutions to difficult problems, can break up a problem into smaller problems, can take a long-term view. So we identified all these behavioral indicators. So for these 6 competencies, we defined simple behavioral indicators. Then what did we do? We said we will create some simple plans that managers can do work with to make changes. So for example, if some team member of yours is weak on clarity of thought, which is not demonstrating clear thinking, not doing any of these, then all that you need to do is don't send this person for a classroom training. Nothing will change. Instead, every day with this person, ask him when you meet, why are we meeting? What are the top 2, 3 objectives of this meeting? What do you expect to accomplish from this? What are the top 2, 3 priorities for you? Ask these 5 questions. For people lacking clarity of thought, these are the 5 questions. This is your approach. For people who are not entrepreneurial, these are the 5 things that you need to do. And all that you need to do is this. There's nothing else, because people find answers to questions that managers consistently ask. Classroom training will not help you to become clear thinkers, will not help you to execute better. But if your manager follows up with you on the right things, you will learn how to execute better. So even if you're not good at this, if your manager follows up with you consistently, you will become much better at it. So we've created a booklet. That's a handbook that we've given every manager. And we said, these are the behaviors you need to look for. If somebody is not meeting these behaviors, then these are the 3 things that you could do. In your team, A could be short on entrepreneurial behaviors. B could be lacking in terms of team building. So for B, you need to do these 4 things. For A, you need to do these 4 things. And that's all you need to do. So managers, if they consistently coach their team members using the handbook, it's effective. So there is no need to take people out to a classroom. In the daily scheme of things, while they are conducting business, they are able to enforce learning. And by setting stretch goals, you're creating a pull. In a review, for example, as I said, if you ask your marketing head next time, I want you to tell me what are the drivers of NPS, how do they correlate with NPS, believe me, your head of marketing will go and figure out statistics, will read up correlation, will figure out all of that. So do this, and a lot of learning will happen. Sorry, it's not moving. Yeah. So this is the same thing that I told you. So in reviews, if somebody is short on entrepreneurial, seek written plans. Ask priorities. Ask for, did you make minutes for the last meeting? We met last time. We had a lot of intellectual discussion. We are going to forget it. Did you minute it? Start every meeting with the actions from the last meeting. Have they been taken or not? So clear thinking, for example, give this person a problem to solve. Keep asking this person, why? Because if you ask why, people go deep. If you don't ask why, they just tell you something and get away. So if somebody tells you this is happening, customer sat scores have been dropping, ask why. The person has maybe just come to meet you and give you news that this customer satisfaction scores have come down. But if you ask why, the person is forced to think. The person will give you one answer why it's come down possibly. Then again why. So all you need to do is hammer home this point, ask this why. So by styling your conversations, by customizing your conversations with people, a lot of learning can be had. So 70%, remember, on-the-job experiences, tough assignments, 20% great conversations. And the manager is in the best position to nurture and create these conversations. In my view, the best leaders are those who can create these conversations, because these conversations create learning. And these conversations are not, something that you have on a Friday evening, once a week. They are to be had every day. They just need to become a way of life, where these conversations where you're trying to solve problems, go deeper, dig deeper, find answers to things that don't seem to go away. At Big Basket, we figured out, everyone is skeptical about, very highfalutin kind of training. Everybody is interested in, our delivery boys are serving customers. How can we create customer experience? If you send, the head of marketing for a conflict management program, that's not going to improve our customer experience. How do we improve customer experience? That is of primary importance. So for us, we started with the bottom of the pyramid. We started with our associates, people who work in warehouses, people who work in customer-facing roles. We trained them. We went after their learning with a lot of passion. We said, how do we improve the way we deliver training? Can we use videos, for example? Can we use ongoing training? We use a startup called Notice Board, where we can plug in questions for people who are on the move. We kept on, playing around with the training program to see which is the best one. Should we have one-day classroom followed by on-the-job, followed by classroom, on-the-job? Then we said no. We kept on making a lot of iterations. So we spent a lot of time on associate-level training. And believe me, it is a lot about execution, because there are 10,000 associates. A delivery boy delivering an order in Nasik has to be able to deliver it exactly like the way a delivery boy in Kolkata delivers that order. So, and there is high level of attrition, so people are coming in. So you need to be able to ensure that people who are coming in are trained exactly the same way. So a lot of execution is involved with this. It's not just about developing a program, but execution. So we executed this very well, and then we went to the next level, which is people who are supervising these guys. Then we went and ensured that they were trained to do their job properly. When we finished that level across the company, then we went to the final level. The final level is about leadership development. Even here in leadership development, we were very particular in terms of what kind of training makes a real impact. What kind of training creates immediate impact. A training imparted which does not have an immediate impact is no use. Because if you put somebody for a training program and that person is going to use those skills, 3 months down the road, the person is not going to learn it. He's going to forget it. So you should be able to use it immediately. So in summary, I would say in fast-paced organizations, there are just two categories of people. Category one is people who are working hard to solve customer problems, people who are working hard to enhance customer experience. And the second category of people are people who are working hard to support the people who are working on customers and creating customer experience. So everybody needs to be aligned to customers, whether it is learning and development, or HR, or marketing, or analytics. Everyone is aligned to creating a great customer experience. So if that alignment is there, I think it's going to be effective. Otherwise, L&D will always be something which is spoken of, for which there is no time. Nobody will have the time. With this, I wrap up. I'm also told the time is just got over.
All right, so the first question, Hari, I think the first and second are same. How can one become ambassador for an organization?
To become an ambassador for the organization, I would say that you need to embody the values of the organization. You need to figure out what are the values of my organization and live those values privately as well as publicly. That's the way you become an ambassador.
Very interesting. I think the next question is also very interesting. Is there a mindset difference with regards to learning and development in a startup as compared to an established organization? If so, what's the difference?
I would say the biggest difference is that in a startup, there is a very serious demand for immediate outcomes. Nobody has the time for outcomes which are 1 year down the road or outcomes which are totally uncertain. So outcomes which are guaranteed, that's the big difference.